So we are fantasy football addicts over here. I want to say, okay, this is gonna sound as bad, but like I think I'm in like 4 or 5 leagues now. How many leagues are you in?
I'm in four
Four. Okay,
and
so we're not as bad as I thought we
maybe
were.
five, maybe five, but I definitely at least four. I'm in three of them with
Okay, we'll say three, four, or five
three
for
of them
you
with
too.
you. Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I've been sitting here throughout the off season. I've just been sitting here and thinking I miss fantasy football almost more than I miss actual football. There's just something about playing your friend and beating them and looking in the eye afterwards. And this guy right here did a lot of losing last season. So you guys are gonna be getting perspective as a
In one league.
from a good fantasy football player and a bad fantasy football player, and hopefully
I did not
somewhere in
have
the
a
middle,
bad team.
hopefully somewhere in
You
the middle,
said,
somewhere in the middle, hopefully we have some actual good advice for
bro.
Dolphins players. I
Even
don't want to hear
even you
you
have
suck at
said
fantasy
my
football.
team.
Don't care. Don't care. You got last
What?
place. Don't care. Hey, if you guys want to, if you guys haven't
I
watched it
got
already,
whoa!
no,
I
no,
got
no.
third
If you guys
place in my
want to,
other two leagues.
nobody
So
cares.
screw off.
Nobody cares. I don't know that. I don't care. If y'all want to watch a very
Yes,
funny
you
video,
do.
if y'all want to watch a very funny video, go watch him completing the Denny slash IHOP challenge because he got last place in our fantasy league. But let's get into it. So the Dolphins have, I'd
Thanks to Damar
say,
Hamlin dying.
I'd say about four fantasy football players or four fantasy relevant players going into this season, and then some guys that are kind of maybes. So the obvious ones, starting off with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Tua, Raheem Mostert. Those are the four that are without a doubt going to be drafted in pretty much every single league you're in, unless you're in like a 6-man league. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at where those players are being drafted currently. Where look, I got a few different rankings up here about where these players are looking like going into the season in redraft leagues, and whether we think that's good value, whether we think they should be higher, whether we think we should be lower. And we're going to start off first with the best player on the Dolphins, that being Tyreek Hill. In redraft leagues, most leagues have him going between 6 and 9. And if you look at the season he had last year, even with a beat up Tua, I think that is a very good ranking for him. A lot of people expected him to come in and lose a lot of value because he's not going to have those over the top throws, even though he did end up getting those this year. And with that assurance that his fit in the offense is going to be fine, it really just comes down to the quarterback situation, whether he's going to live up to that middle to late round, first round pick.
It's fairly easy in my mind. He's easily going to live up to that again. The second year in the offense, they're going to have a lot more diversity in the offense. However, the two main guys are still Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. The number one guy, obviously, still Tyreek Hill. And like you said, he produced without Tua there as well, almost breaking the yardage record. He was on pace before Tua got hurt, but then he still produced in those games. Instead of getting 150 yards, he was getting like 70. But
Yeah. And
still produced. Unlike Jalen Waddle, which when Tua didn't play, he didn't produce.
yeah, Jalen Waddle of the two did have the biggest splits of success, and we'll get into Jalen Waddle in a second. The only thing that sometimes holds Tyreek back is he does not have, or at least last season, did not have a high touchdown production. And we actually saw too, it did kind of struggle when we got to the red zone. We scored a lot of red zone touchdowns, but the when the field is shortened and you have both a quarterback who's not going to move around a lot, as well as smaller in stature wide receivers, when you get to that area of the field, it is harder to find them in the end zone with the field reduced. However, when you're starting with the ball at the 25-yard line, there's very few guys you'd rather have in your fantasy football lineup. We're looking at Justin Jefferson. We're looking at Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp. I have a hard time arguing outside of those three for anybody over Tyreek Hill this year.
Yeah, honestly, I'm right there with you on that, especially in redraft. Like I don't see a reason for anybody to go above him besides those three.
Yeah,
You know,
those three I think are.
I do have him ranked fourth because Cooper Cup triple crown winner when he wasn't hurt, and he was leading the league in both catches and yards before he got hurt last year. Uh, Justin Jefferson, obviously the best wide receiver in the league last year, and then Jamar Chase. I mean, he's just Jamar Chase.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is probably definitely number two right after Justin Jefferson. Cooper Kupp is the one that I guess you could argue because he's coming off of injury season where also his quarterback got hurt. But assuming both those guys are healthy, I mean, I think he was wide receiver one before he got hurt. So there's nothing wrong for being behind those guys. But then going down to Jalen Waddle is where the conversation can be started to had. So it really is a difference of opinion for a lot of people. Like the ranking I got pulled up right now is fantasyfootballcalculator.com, and Jalen Watt, they have him listed as wide receiver 10 after Amon-Ra St. Brown, after CeeDee Lamb, after A.J. Brown, and he's going to be drafted at probably, just based off that, between 25 to 28. I have him a little bit higher than that. I have him right at the end of the second round, depending on if you're 10 or a 12-man league. If you're a 12-man league, right at the end of the second round, beginning of the third. So more likely to be between 19 and, let's call it, 23. Waddle is a
There's
PPR
no
monster,
way.
and we did. Although when you pair him up next to Tyreek Hill, there is a slight drop off in terms of explosiveness, but you're not getting a lot of a drop off there. And you look at some of the other guys around him. Amon-Ra St. Brown is eventually going to have Jameson Williams back in the lineup, as well as he has a bad quarterback. You have T. Higgins, who's right behind him. Of the two, I'd rather have Tyreek Hill as a second wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown do have the benefit of being that wide receiver one, so I guess it makes sense for those guys.
You said Tyreek Hill instead of Jalen Waddle there, but yeah,
you know what I meant.
I do know what you. I just wanted to clarify for the people out there. But yeah, if Jalen Waddle is not in your top 10 of receivers when drafting, what are you doing in fantasy? Like if he's still there in the end of the second round, beginning of third, and he's there for the taking, take him. Don't hesitate. Like that's like saying Travis Kelce is still there in the middle of the second round. If you don't take him in the middle of the second round, what are you doing?
Yeah, I was surprised to see him. So in the wide receiver rankings, I think that's kind of all right. I'd say I'd had him just above Amon-Ra St. Brown. Again, the guy's ahead of him. He is the highest number 2 wide receiver in the league, and I think he is the best number 2 wide receiver in the league. But even with that,
That's clear.
With the production that the Dolphins get in their passing game, I think he can be and will be above Amon-Ra St. Brown. He finished as wide receiver 7 last year in most PPR leagues, with Tua missing. How many games was it? 5, 6 games, whatever it ended up being, either missing or going out early in those games, or being concussed basically the entire game. He was without the starting quarterback for a decent bit of the season, and still finished at wide receiver 7, and they have him going back to wide receiver 10.
That's insane to me. I once again, I still don't get it. And given, I think part of it is his reliance on Tua. Because when he had Tua there, he was, wide, like a top 5 wide receiver in the league. When without Tua, he was wide receiver 20 or worse. But with that being said, I, more than most, have confidence that Tua will be playing all 17 games this year.
How much money would you put on that?
Well, depends on how much the winnings are. Like if it's plus 1,000, yeah, I'll place $100 bet to win $1,000.
Just throw it out. What's the most amount of money you would throw down onto it being fully healthy this season?
300.
Okay, well, jeez. With that, Tua is the next guy on that list. Again, according to fantasyfootballcalculator.com, they have Tua ranked 12, just behind quarterbacks Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers, and just ahead of Daniel Jones and Russell Wilson. Now, you guys know, I'm not necessarily the Tua guy. I'm not a Tua hater by any means. I like to call myself the bridge between the haters and the lovers. The guy right here is definitely in the lover category, and I'm in my own category because I'm special. But if you look at his fantasy,
special, all right.
Oh, we no doubt about that. I've hit my head probably 12 times today. You look at 12 at his fantasy ranking. That in a 10-man league is one of the first backups in a 12-man, is the last of the starters. Again, I haven't been the best or the highest of Tua guys, but considering the offense that he has at his disposal, is there anything to worry about outside the fact that, he might just hit his head every now and then?
With Tua, I still think I think 12. If he's still there for your 12th ranked quarterback, I would take him easily. I'd probably take him over Kirk Cousins.
Yes,
just because. I mean, given that we're talking about strictly fantasy here, by the way, guys, strictly fantasy.
For both, I think I'd take him over Kirk Cousins.
Well, for both, I mean, but like, for example, like I would probably take him over a couple of people that are ahead of him in fantasy, like Dak Prescott, the past couple years, I would take him in fantasy, but I don't like him as a quarterback, for my team kind of thing. Um, I'm very low on Dak. Like
Yeah.
Tannehill, like him, but I'm not gonna put him in fantasy. Two very different, things.
Yeah.
Tua, I think, top 10 quarterback. I also think maybe, with the weapons that he has, and they're going to incorporate more passing, short passing with the running backs. I think he could possibly be a top 8, top 7 fantasy quarterback.
Now, when you look at those top 8 guys that are already ranked, they actually start with Josh Allen, which I think is absolutely interesting. Can you not pull up an ad right now? Christmas in July? I don't care. Leave my screen. If you look at the other guys within this, you look at it starts off actually with Josh Allen, which I think is interesting. But then you look at Josh Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Burrow, Lamar, Justin Herbert, Justin Fields. Those are all the top 7. You look at all of those guys. They're either excellent runners or they can do a job. Like Joe Burrow, not running the ball. He's never going to have a play really drawn up for him, but he's a little nimble. We've seen that throw in the championship game or as a semifinal in college football. Tua does miss that from his game, so pretty much all the fantasy points you're going to get from him is going to be in the air.
So another thing with that is that those teams also, like our team, have deep wide receiver, or they have great wide receiver rooms. They have deep wide receiver rooms. I mean, the Chargers just drafting Quentin Johnston. I mean, given they needed that depth because last year, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Gerald Everett played 20 snaps together?
Yeah,
it was or something ridiculous. It was ridiculous. Whereas you have probably the greatest trio in the league right now for the Bengals with T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and
I think we're gonna say that for us. I'm like, wait. Calm down. I like the enthusiasm, but let's just simmer down.
No. I was talking about trio of wide receivers. Uh-huh. The Bengals.
Who even is that? We've talked about it for like 2 weeks and we still can't figure it out.
Well, it's going to come down to training camp, and you and I will be at some of those training camps, and we'll have it's clear. Coverage to tell you guys.
It's clear the Bengals are they in terms of wide receiver trios, and that's what elevates him so high, as well as he is arguably if you're Andrew, according to Andrew, the best quarterback in the league. That's what separates those guys. You then look at the next.
Justin Fields is also up there too, right?
Justin Fields, where is he? My phone keeps refreshing for some stupid reason. Justin Fields is he's got to be up there. Yeah, Justin Fields is 7. He's the last of that top 7, and that's that speaks for how much being able to move impacts fantasy football and be able to pick up. He might get like 10 rushing touchdowns. If Tua gets 2, you're like, okay, you know what? At least there's some sort of threat. Roll them out one direction or another. We've seen him do it in the past. And then you get down to Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence. I might have him just over Dak, but definitely I'm still sticking with Trevor Lawrence over Tua, and I know how you feel about that.
Fantasy wise, I think he may do better this year, because he gets Calvin Ridley back. Or back. He never had him in the first place, but he has Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
He's coming back in general. Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk really showed out last year. Zay Jones was a very good 2 last year. He's now their 3. It's a very underrated receiving core. And then on top of that, you also have Evan Ingram there. And then you have 2 good pass catching backs. So it's definitely a passing system there. Whereas the Cowboys have been nonstop talk about running the ball. So I don't think Dak is going to be better than Tua this year.
Yeah, that's all very fair comparisons to make. And the last of the 4, we can talk about Devon Achane. Devon Achane's probably not going to get drafted in any of your redraft leagues, and Dynasty is a decent option to see what he can do in the future. Jeff Wilson teeters between being drafted and undrafted. He could end up coming out of camp as a running back 1. We don't know, but Raheem Mostert is the last guy, and just in terms of this season. They currently have him ranked as running back number 42. That's just behind Kareem Hunt, who's not even on a team, behind Jahmyr Gibbs, which I'm surprised he's that low, and then right in front of Devin Singletary, Ezekiel Elliott, and Kenneth Gainwell. And I think
2 people that are not
2 people are not on a team,
teams.
But I think that's definitely fair when you look at Raheem Mostert, when one of these free agents who are actually above him in this rankings might join the Dolphins. there's a very strong possibility, not very strong, but there is a possibility that he doesn't end up as the RB1 on the team. It's such a volatile group of backs, and last year production was not what we thought it was, especially in the receiving game, which is something that we've seen success with Raheem Mostert. So this very low ranking, I kind of have to agree with.
Oh, absolutely. Like, we don't even know if he's going to make the team, if we're going to be quite honest with you, because if we sign Dalvin Cook or Kareem Hunt, uh, who knows what happens with Jeff Wilson. Now, I do think it's more likely that we end up cutting one of the other backs, like Savon Ahmed or Miles Gaskin.
Yeah.
But, trading Jeff Wilson, it's a very tradable contract. I mean, we talked about this over and over and over again. These contracts are practically all the same for all these running backs that have signed this year.
Yeah.
2 year, $8 million.
Jeff Wilson, I don't even know where Jeff Wilson is on this list because of the possibility of being replaced, and definitely already starting off as RB2. But Raheem Mostert, he's somebody that's going to be replaceable. Like if you end up drafting him as let's say your fourth or fifth running back in redraft, it's one of those guys that you can see the possibility that he explodes, because he still has the explosiveness. He still is really good in space, and is not great between the tackles, but he's a little taller than most running backs, so he can kind of do a job in between the tackles. But he does have that breakout ability. He has the reception game, which in PPR is huge. He also, just a little timeout, if you don't play PPR, you're an absolute weirdo, because I know there's some people that don't. You're a weirdo if you play just regular standard fantasy football. I don't even understand why they call that the standard. All right, if you don't play PPR, you're a loser. I don't want to talk to you. All right, this is PPR based. Just I didn't say that at any point during this video, so here we're at. This is where we're at. Raheem Mostert has all those upsides. He is held back by the situation he's in. You look at the receiving game. The Dolphins have made it clear that it's a pass-first team. He's not going to be probably week in, week out averaging anywhere near 15 points per game, but there could be weeks where you see him get 15 to 20 points.